1, 2, 3, 4.
All right, welcome back to Country and Cold Cans. As always, I'm Logan, sitting here with Andy and Kyle, and today we are very excited because we have a special guest on the show. We have Mr. Nicholas Jamerson, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Like I was telling you a little bit before we started recording, I've been listening to Sunday Best since I was in college. Probably, I think I discovered y'all's music back in like 2014, so it's been a good little while. And then I got to give a shout out to the Meme Man for turning me on to your solo stuff, because he kind of has been filling us in a little bit more on the Kentucky scene, because y'all got some good music coming out of there lately.
Yeah, man, it's really crazy. The abundance of artists that are becoming known on a regional and national level, and Jonathan in particular, man, he's been such a champion for so many people and just connecting so many people. And it's crazy because, I mean, what he does, with the memes is hilarious, but like it's just crazy how the synergy that's kind of surrounding his thing. So that's really cool. I owe him a lot, honestly.
Yeah, man, he definitely does do a good job at what he does, because like his memes are, one, they're hilarious, but two,
exactly,
he does a good job of like I guess getting more awareness for a lot of like independent artists. Because I know me and him were talking about, there's a band out of North Carolina that unfortunately it looks like they're splitting up, but they just put out a record last year called Whiskey Foxtrot. It's kind of like an alt country, kind of similar in sound in some ways to like American Aquarium. But me and him were talking about them because like had been like pushing them out there too. But he just does a fantastic job at being able to kind of get that out there. So we definitely appreciate him helping us out on that.
Yeah, for
turning
sure.
us on to your music. But one thing I did want to ask you, because like we mentioned like Kentucky music, but there's a common, sonically, there seems to be like a common thread that runs through, but it's still different enough from artist to artist. And like, I always want to ask the artist this. So like when I have you here, how do you describe your music? Because like when it comes to like genres and everything, because I know some people are hardcore on them. Some people are a little bit more lenient on that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think I draw from a lot of different wells, this is the country music highway, like the highway that goes like out past my house. So like country is really deep here, and I'm 10 minutes from like Loretta Lynn's home place.
Oh wow!
And I think that ties into like I grew up singing in church a lot, so there's like that Southern gospel, country, bluegrass kind of thing that's going through it all, but I grew up honestly listening to rock and roll and like soul music, and I mean even R&B, like Brian McKnight. That was a huge influence on my just because it was fun and different to sing. But I try not to get too caught up on the genre that I'm trying to be in, because I don't want to pigeonhole myself into anything. I really love exploring it all, and I've been exploring more electronic music just because it's been so hard to get together, with people the last year. It's like, well, how can I make music at home? And man, that's a completely different animal there, the electronic stuff. So
yeah, it definitely is. It's something that I don't have a lot of experience with, like really listening to and everything, but I have a buddy of mine that is really into that stuff. He all the time is sending me stuff to listen to, and like I keep telling him, I'm like, look, man, maybe one day it'll click for me. It just hasn't.
Yeah. Well, and when I say electric, I just mean like you can do like country music, like there's so many loops and samples like that. I took a class in January. It was this guy that he's the lead singer of what is the group? One Republic. Okay. Ryan Tedder's his name, and he's got like a songwriter show on NBC and all that stuff, and that's completely pop music. I've not been into pop music probably since TRL, all that stuff. But it's just crazy the way that music can be made now and how accessible it is to people, and I'm excited to see what this last year is going to do to music. You know what I'm saying? Like any new music that it's like inspiring so much. People are just I feel like just going to a different place than they ever have. So
yeah, cool I definitely agree with you, because I really think that, over the last year has been a lot different, really different for what all of us were used to. And I just think that there's probably going to be like this massive boom of just like of songs coming from people. Cause like I know this probably been different for you guys as artists, where you haven't probably been able to tour as much. So like, what do you still want to be creative and flex those muscles some. So I think there probably is going to be a lot of like killer new stuff with kind of a different perspective than what you would have had if it was a regular year.
Most definitely.
I know Travis Tritt said that exact same thing the other day. He said it was going to be like a baby boom for music.
That's yeah. I mean, that's the perfect way of putting it. It's like I feel like artists have always been like, it's like they are the storytellers of like what's going on in the collective. You know what I'm saying? So It's like, I mean, that's what the baby boom was, and like the Renaissance and all that stuff. It was like almost like alchemically, like they're like they're taking all this crappy stuff that's happened and like, it's going on inside, and then they throw it onto guitar licks or you know what I'm saying? So
100%.
It's going to be cool to see.
Yeah, I definitely think too. Like I'm somebody that
already is, but
yeah, definitely. So I'm somebody that loves like sad music. We like to joke around on this show that sad songs make us happy. So like I know that with unfortunately some of the bad things that have happened over the last year and to varying degrees for people, I think it's going to you're going to get some killer bummer jams coming out of it, and I'm kind of really excited about that.
Yeah, no doubt. That's been probably the biggest theme of the year, is just being sad and having to deal with all that stuff. So I've definitely got a few in the bag. So
yeah. So
sad boy country.
Yeah, exactly. Sad boy country. That's a good way of putting it. So how has the last year been different for you, specifically, like with just, I guess, everything kind of being, for lack of a better way of saying it, shut down compared to normal?
Well, number one, I had a baby. Like we were pregnant. We got pregnant probably 2 weeks into. I mean, it was in March. Yeah. So
well,
it didn't take us.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate it.
It's a great story to tell in the future.
What's that?
I said it'd be a great story to tell in the future.
Me along.
Yeah.
Me along with, I don't know. There's so many people. What are they calling the corn? What are they calling the babies that have been had in quarantine? I don't know. Sorry, I'm asking I don't know, but yeah, there's that seems to be a common thing. I don't know if people got bored or
gotta kill time somehow.
Yeah, exactly.
You can only drink with so much whiskey, so
right. Yeah.
There are worse ways to kill time than that.
Yeah. But I mean, so other than that, I mean, tour. I put out a record in 2020 called The Wild Frontier, and I had that had been like a 4-year project that leading up to, and so obviously I think everybody thought it was going to be a big year. I don't know how you guys felt, but like 2020, it was like, yeah. I mean, I kept going 2020, perfect vision, 2020. Like everything's going to happen, and it happened, but just not
the way we thought.
Yeah. So it's weird though, because I mean, as much as I was looking forward to, as much as I thought was going to happen, like I thought that record, we were just going to take it all over the country and play it. I was kind of relieved at the same time. I've been thinking about that the last couple of days, because it's like it's coming up on a year of the release, and I'm just, I've been thinking about that, and it's kind of relief that I didn't have to go, that I didn't have to do, like, because keeping a band together is so hard, and so I really just tried to surrender as well as I could. Me and my brother started painting houses, just as a kind of, and doing construction stuff, and that was good. You were talking about flexing that muscle. It was good to like flex different muscles, because I've been in the just full-time tour musician thing for like 10 years, and you'd be surprised, like when like just going and picking up wood, and taking it to like just go for work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like go get this, go get that. Like how hard that was for me at times, just mentally, just because I just hadn't done it in so long. And,
oh yeah.
So it was good in that way to just stretch those new muscles and kind of not be so reliant on one thing. That feel like it's made us more flexible, as far as making life work, like just getting by. So
yeah, we've kind of like in the same vein of that, like with this podcast, we used to never record remotely because we just didn't really know about Zoom. So I guess one positive for us come out of the last year with the pandemic was Zoom just kind of blew up, and it's made interviews like right now where we're able to talk to you. Like we're in North Carolina, you're in Kentucky, and we're able to, do these things where before we couldn't be as consistent because I live in Raleigh. I don't know how familiar you are with North Carolina, but I live in Raleigh. Kyle lives in Roanoke Rapids, and Andy, he's a truck driver, so God knows where he is on any given day. But yeah, it's definitely been there have been some silver linings throughout the whole thing. But you said you put out a solo record. So one thing I was curious about is how different is like the process for you when you're doing a solo record versus like a record with Sunday Best?
I think that Sunday Best was very and is probably more about entertainment, like just straight up like selling beer
right.
not
yeah.
like when we first started, we were young and playing in bars, and it was like it was high energy, and I still like, it's like I just kind of got it's hard to do that all the time, just
right.
to be up all the time. And I think solo more of the sad boy stuff at first, was just like just getting it deeper into storytelling and deeper into just emotional, like or existential stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that the Sunday Best stuff was like just kind of lighthearted. I think because it was when we were both starting out pretty much, as songwriters, so you're I think probably more general themed, just because you're young and you stick with what you know and you've not done as much. So like love and party and
as Coetzel said, song that I can drink to.
Yeah, exactly. So it's been good to do the solo stuff because it's just given more freedom, I think, and being able to appreciate all of it, because it's music to begin with, and I got into it to enjoy it, and but it's just easy to pigeonhole yourself when you're trying to make a living doing it, and you kind of you want to stick with what works, but evolve at the same time, and it's a tricky thing to balance because people come to the shows because of probably your earlier stuff or what they know. People want to hear what they know, and if that's that first record that came out in 2012, well, I mean, I've done 10 records. Like I've been a part of 10 records, like both with Sunday Best and solo. So it's like I may not be there, mentally in that space to like want to do that early kind of party, stuff, because that's kind of it was like I said, it was the good time. So
it's just part of getting old. it's just part of getting older too. When you're young, you want to go to a show. The last thing you want to go to is a sit down show, and then 10 years later, you're sitting there thinking like, "Ah, man, I sure could go for a chair." Right.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's what I'm sitting on when I'm playing. Like that's where I'm at with it. You said something about Travis Tritt earlier. I got to open up for Travis years ago, and he's like halfway through his set, he brings out like a computer chair, and he's sitting just in that computer chair, like on stage, singing and playing. I'm like, at the time, I was like, man, Travis has gotten old, but I'm like, man, he's got it figured out.
Yeah, it's like I get it now.
Totally.
Did you get to hang out with him much when you were opening that show for him?
No. I try to stay away from. I just try to stay out of the way usually, unless it organically happens. I just, it just depends. It's a mixed thing. I have mixed feelings because it's like people are there to do a job, and they don't have time. Some of them just don't feel like it. Like they just got to be focused. Because I'm that way about doing shows. But I'll tell you a funny story. I went and saw Chris Stapleton when he was with. I don't know if you're familiar with the Johnson Brothers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I felt like I was. We were kind of ahead of the curve with Chris in Kentucky because he's another one that's like county over.
Right.
And so he was like, we knew about him, the early Steel Drivers days. And so we go and see him, and there's not many people there. And it was to the point that we could talk to him after the show. And I mean, I was just fluffing him, buddy, like just blowing him up, just telling him how great I thought he was. And I leaned in because the music was playing, and like I got a mouthful of his hair in my mouth. And I'm just like, I'm just like, just kill me now, because here, like I said, hero status, and I get his hair in my mouth, and so I just after that point I was like, you know what, if any of these guys, if I get a chance to say hello, I will, but I'm not going to like go out of my way to to speak.
Yeah, I feel you, man, because like I think I've told this story on a past episode before, but when Andy and I first started this thing about 2 years ago, we reached out to, so I'm a big old 97s fan. I've loved their music for a long time. Rhett Miller, I just think he's one of my favorite songwriters I've ever really got to listen to. And we reached out to him when it was like episode 4, something like that of this Country Cold Cans. I was like, I told Andy, I said, hell, I'm going to reach out to Rhett Miller. We're already at a no. Might as well just see if he'll come on the show. We had never interviewed anybody a day in our lives. Surprisingly, Rhett Miller said yes, because he was playing in Durham that weekend. He was like, yeah, he goes, we'll do an interview backstage before the show. Andy and I were like, well, hell, this is going to be awesome. Well, I get in there and never interviewed anybody. I'm sitting across from one of my musical heroes that I've been listening to for years. And I could not remember how to hook up the microphones, how to record. I felt so bad because I made him sit there for like 15 minutes, and I just stared blankly. I was like, my mind's at a blank, man. I'm so sorry. And but he was the nicest guy. He took it in stride. I was just like, man, I was like, I can't believe I did that.
That's awesome, though.
Yeah, it's always
because it's cool. It's cool. He was cool, about it. And that's the thing. It's like, if they're cool, it's awesome. But if they suck, then it sucks, because it's like
you kind of embarrass yourself right there. Like, I felt that too. So yeah.
Well, and like also like for me, like being a fan of people's music, it's like you have such a strong, you feel like you know them, and like this strong attachment. But it's like, at the end of the day, not everybody is like ready for you to tell, to have that conversation and do that whole thing. So,
yeah, you just don't want to be that guy.
Exactly. And I have been that guy. So.
I have been that guy.
Yeah, we definitely have at a few concerts. Like I hear artists now that I've actually have gotten to like talk to artists and get to know some of them, and like they tell you about things they don't like for fans to do. I kind of am like, yeah, totally. And then the back of my mind, I'm like, I've been that guy before.
Yeah. because it's all about timing. It's like, for me, it's like, I obviously want people to be into what I'm doing. It's kind of the nature of the thing. It's like you make it and you want people to be into it, but it can just be like overwhelming sometimes for someone to just come at you with all this. It's love, I think, ultimately is what it is, but it can just be like,
it can just be a lot.
It can just be a lot. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean,
especially after a show,
Yeah. You just
set
up there for
when I'm that guy.
Oh yeah, like we were talking about how we got to meet Jamie Lynn Wilson in Raleigh one time, and everybody in our group was hammered at that concert. And we took a picture with her, but we ended up taking like 6 pictures with her. And I was just like, I'm so glad that she is just such a nice human being, because we were the obnoxious fans and just like, hey, can we take a picture? Can we take a picture?
I don't even know how many times, because at that same time, I'm like, oh, I'm glad I wasn't the one that was taking a picture with her. And then Logan just shows me the picture of me and her, and I was like, I don't
was
remember
that.
I hope she doesn't think less of me.
What was it used to say, Andy? Whatever I do when I'm drunk is none of my business.
Yeah,
that's perfect.
Oh man.
Yes. How close are all the bands in Kentucky? Because I know it's like every time I talk to somebody from Kentucky, like Jonathan and all of them, they're all super like supportive of everybody from Kentucky. Is it kind of the same way for like the bands that are from Kentucky?
Yeah, I think for the most part, I'm not gonna lie. There's drama, I think, just like anywhere else, but I think for the most part, it's pretty positive, and it's it's always kind of been a thing, but it's never been this big, like on a regional level. And so I think that's due to a lot of the mutual respect and support, and like people have really built the scene together, so you're doing a lot of just legwork with each other. And I don't throw this out there lightly, but I'm a huge fan of like the Eagles and that whole scene of Echo Canyon, or just California, back in the day, and all these artists that kind of emerged at once. And I feel like, and the same thing with like the outlaw country music of like, Willie and Cash and Christoph and those guys. It's like, I'm not saying from like a talent perspective, but like they kind of came up together. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like they did the dirty work together. So those relationships, I think that's why the music became so good, because it was authentic. Like they had like shared experience with each other. It wasn't like, boy bands of the 2000s where they
got put together by the label.
Yeah. So it's pretty cool. It's really crazy to just see how, for me, it goes back to Stapleton and Sturgill and those like early days when nobody even in like Lexington, it was like a hotbed for all this stuff. Nobody really knew them, so, yeah. But it goes back beyond them of Ricky Skaggs, and it's a super rich tradition. So, yeah, it's a cool thing to be a part of.
Yeah, I bet it is, because like I said earlier, there seems to be like this. I don't even know how to explain it in a articulate way, but like you can kind of tell when some of the artists that are like kind of in this scene, for lack of a better term, that they're from Kentucky, because like there's this Appalachian kind of feel to it. Even if the music doesn't necessarily sound all exactly alike by any means, but there's just, you can kind of feel that. And I think it's pretty cool to see, because I like seeing the influence of where someone's from come through in their music.
For sure. I think it's a spirit that like feeds itself, just a creative, it's why people go to Nashville, it's that creative energy that's there. And, yeah, there's so much of it, in Kentucky. And I tell you, there's a lot in North Carolina too. I'm buddies with a few bands from down there, and it seems like they've kind of got like this Red Dirt thing, right? Like, is that American Aquarium?
Yeah, so American Aquarium's out of Raleigh. Yeah, they kind of have been accepted by the Texas Oklahoma people in the last like 5 years or so.
Yeah.
But they're definitely, in North Carolina. Well, throughout the years, they've been a predominantly North Carolina member band. BJ's had 1 million members in that band.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there is I mean, he sings about the state a lot. So it's like, for instance, in some of the songs, he talks about little things that are here around Raleigh, like Slim's. He mentions that in St. Mary's, and that's a little dive bar that down on South Wilmington Street here in town. But he definitely like references and has kind of that North Carolina attitude in a lot of his songs, I would say.
That's cool. I'll tell you who Corey Smith was like a big influence for me in college, and that's what I loved about him, and it really influenced my writing a lot, was just the kind of regional specific, like you're talking about with BJ and like North Carolina. Like Corey Smith was like talking about things from Georgia, so that resonated with me, and that's kind of a theme that I've continued in my writing, is just specific to here, because it's like everybody's hometown is special in one way or another, so if you're writing about something specific to you, then to me it's like it's unique already, it's, as opposed to like the top 40 country stuff that's just kind of general, and it is what it is. I think that stuff plays its part too, but it can just be watered down.
It can be. It's like it's not even that some of the stuff in the mainstream is quote unquote bad. It's just it's so forgettable. Like and we're on this podcast because we had the guys from Hippies and Cowboys on I think last year, and we were telling them that like while we're into definitely more independent music, we are a little bit friendlier to some mainstream stuff than like they are. But it just lacks a lot of substance. I think it seems like sometimes it's just manufactured for a hit, and I just don't really hear that coming out of Kentucky, which is one of the reasons I've been getting more and more into some of the artists coming out of your area, because it just seems more authentic and more real.
Yeah, true. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's I'm not going to say that people aren't trying to do something, like get something out of their songs, because I think people want to be known and be heard, their story be told. But yeah, it's definitely not the same as a more manufactured just industry. Like, I mean, it's industry. It's not just it's not just playing music like Nashville.
It's a machine.
It is a machine, and I think that it's like, I just think it's a waste of energy, honestly, to bash it so much. It's like, it is what it is. I think that there's room for improvement, obviously, but it's like, okay, then let's do that. Like, I think that for me, I've become more open to like that side of things, and just be like, well, if I add what I bring to the table to that, then to me, it's because I'm not coming from that perspective of like just trying to get a number one. I mean, that would be sweet. That would be awesome. But, I just think that there's a middle ground that can be found in country music radio. That's not, I think there'll probably always be cornball stuff. There always kind of has been, like no matter how far you go back, like there's been copycats. The history of the history of music, everything's already been done before. So it's like, if we can find a less cheesy, more authentic, and I think Stapleton does a great job of that. And I think he really changed like some of the threads of radio country, that you're kind of getting back to a more traditional sound. And that's what I just want, like those, like traditional instrumentation. Like that's what I think makes it country, not talking about it, how country you are. It's like, it's a sound. And, so real instruments, that would be my, suggestion for, changing it.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Like when people get to talking about like how redneck they are, but it's in a rap song, and then they want to call it country music. I was like, that's not exactly what this is. That's not how this works.
No, it's not.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I always bring up this guy because in the mainstream, because he's probably one of the biggest things in popular country music at the moment. But it's like Luke Combs, for instance. One thing I got to say I respect about him, does he have reference beer in most songs? Sure.
Uh-huh.
I mean, the songwriting, some of it's pretty good, some of it's pretty standard for, you know, what you expect out of a mainstream artist. But for the most part, his music actually sounds country. It kind of is reminiscent of a little bit of that like late 90s, early 2000s stuff, more so than, I guess, the 2013 Bro Country era or the Sam Hunt, whatever that's called. I don't even know. But,
yeah, tractor rap.
Tractor rap, yeah.
I agree. I think Luke's a really great singer. You know,
Yeah.
I think that I think his earlier stuff, you know, auto-tune is a part. It's got this sound of radio country. I've been auto-tuned and I hated it, but it is what it is. But he doesn't need that. Like,
No.
you know, he doesn't need that. And again, it's like there are elements of country music that is like beer drinking and good timing and like the general themes. You know, my thing is like, okay, tell me more.
Yeah.
What's behind that? As just from a listener to an artist, you know, like, okay, we know you like that, but give me, you know, we've all gone through this pandemic. It's like, give me that perspective. Give me like, what have you realized on the other side of this? You know, that's maybe it's that you like Jaeger bombs more. I don't know, but whatever.
Yeah, just give us something a little different. Because don't get me wrong, I like cold beer, pickup trucks, and girls and Daisy Dukes as much as the next guy. But at the same time, sometimes I want something a little bit deeper, something a little more to the story.
Yes. Yeah. So, like I said, there's room for it all, I think.
Yeah.
And it doesn't all have to be so damn serious.
No.
So I have been victim of just trying to be too sad boy and too emotional about it, and just be like, man, I just need to drink a beer and chill out and play.
Yeah. I just wish that we could get radio to the point where you could go from Luke Combs to Kelsey Ballerini to Tyler Childers. You know what I mean? Because Tyler Childers, like that guy is like, I don't know what it is, man. That guy's just super talented. And I just think it's a shame that he's not played on the radio. But to his credit, he's been able to build up this really big fan base organically without having to go through the machine, as we said. Because you go to a NC State tailgate for a football game here, and you'll have people switch from pop country but when White House Road comes on, everybody knows the lyrics. And I'm just like, it's crazy to me how much he's grown over the last few years.
Oh yeah. Tyler's another one that seeing from like ground zero, it's crazy how fast. I mean, it didn't happen overnight because he's gigged and worked hard for a long time. But as far like you're saying, like from the masses, it's pretty incredible. And I honestly think that it's like talking about things shifting. Like he's got a heavy load, you know, to shift the pendulum. I think towards. I think that it's happening. I think it's going to happen. It's just, you know, that ripple just takes a while for it. But, you know, money talks, and I know that I know he's a big draw. And I mean, Billy Strings, he's not really a country guy, but, you know, it's in that same kind of vein of bluegrass, country, kind of more just – I feel like it's music that's more rooted like in culture, and like it's got deeper roots. You know what I'm saying? Like country music and like I guess those instruments, like that goes back long. There's a lot of heritage, you know, attached to that stuff, and I think, you know, stuff that's ingrained in us as humans that have just been passed on from our ancestors. Like it's like a primal thing. I feel anyway, experiencing it anyway. My grandparents growing up, my earliest memories were like my grandparents and uncles and aunts and like people of the holler, like playing bluegrass instrumentation, like around the house. And, there's so many people like that, the farther back you go. And, that's just been a huge draw, everywhere you look, those guys are playing. And so it's not to just bash Nashville and country radio, but like we said, they're kind of copycats. So,
in a lot of ways. Maybe they'll start trying to copy Tyler instead of
that's
Keith Urban.
What I'm for sure. I think that's definitely, I think they're looking for the next one. So he or she's out there, and it's going to happen. So
it's like we were just talking about last episode, Morgan Wade's new record, man. Like that thing is just a straight jam all the way through. Like I saw her play. She opened up for American Aquarium here in Raleigh a few years ago, and I recognized her talent then, but I didn't get into it up until I was a little late to the party. It was really when her record dropped, and I was just like, man, this is fantastic stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I think what's interesting about her is that she hadn't put a record out, and there was so much talk around her. I thought that was pretty impressive. It says a lot about her and her team and the whole thing. Because it was like, I was the same way. I'd heard a lot about her, but I until there wasn't really much music out there. I know she performed a lot around Kentucky too, in a lot of these things, and Sadler Vaden producing it. It's like in a country vein, but it's rock and roll too. Like that's what I really got out of it was which is cool, So and she's got a kind of a classic country voice.
For sure.
Same time. So
it's like I know that I've seen it on the internet at least, but God, you can find anything on the internet. But I know there were some people that were kind of disappointed with the sound of her new record because they see mostly her like acoustic stuff she had done traveling and touring. Yeah. And she, like you said, her voice and a guitar definitely has she has the kind of like that classic country voice. But like then the production they weren't happy about. But I'm just like, I don't know how you can not like this when you listen to it, because it is a little bit more, I hate using this term, but it is a little bit more Americana than it is straight up country. And has kind of like, a rock edge to it. But then again, like we're all big rock fans here. So like we kind of really liked it. But I got to say that was a fantastic record. I was very impressed by her on that. But so like when it comes to, I guess cat's out of the bag. I saw it on Twitter a while back, but Sunday Best is, kind of getting back together and putting out, are y'all putting out any new music coming up soon?
Yeah, well, we made some. We recorded a record last week, and I don't really know what the timeline is of putting it out. We're kind of figuring that out right now. It's just with the state of the world still, and not knowing about how touring is and having a kid too. It's like it changes things, and we're just trying to take our time and kind of ease back into it and not get ahead of ourselves, because we kind of got burnt out before just on the running around all over the place. And it's fun. It's, don't get me wrong, but it's, I mean, truck driving, it's not quite the same, but it's, you're town to town, and it can kind of be a whirlwind, I'm sure, for you, like knowing where you slept last,
I can't imagine what it would be like to travel like this and then still have a family. I can't imagine after having a kid that it's no way it could be the same as it was before that.
Or get up on stage and sing, you know what I'm saying? Like be in a car for 6-7 hours, then have to get your shit together enough to sing, and then have to do it 3-4 more nights in a row, and then that's just it. And
yeah, I've always thought that too. Like I've thought like, oh, it'd be cool to be a musician and all this stuff. And then I get done traveling. I'm like, I'm sure glad now that I'm here, my day is done. Yeah. I don't have to do anything else.
Yeah. I mean, it's awesome. Don't get me wrong. Like it is great, but there's just a lot of, there's a lot of in between stuff that nobody thinks about, or it's like getting to the stage. That's the hardest part. And, I'm trying to do this until I can't, until I am dead, so hopefully that's a long time. And I just, long way to the top if you want to rock and roll, and, and that's why I just have to keep telling myself, it's like, it's not a race. It's not a race. Just I don't want to burn out.
Yeah.
So, we're going to do some shows this year and just see how touring opens up. And we will release some music this year. I'm sure of it. I don't know in what capacity, maybe a couple singles, but singles, that's a whole new thing too. Cause I just came from a time of, making records and like, it's one big thing. And I sound like an old guy saying,
we're right there with you.
Totally agree.
We're right there with you. I don't like how I get why they do it. Right.
Yeah.
Like Drake does it and he's super successful with it, but I'm a guy who likes the common thread and the cohesiveness of an album. And like, I kind of miss the days. Like, don't get me wrong. I love streaming music because it's just made, I probably would have had a harder time finding out about artists that are not from my area that aren't mainstream in a past era compared to what I have now. But I almost missed the times to when you didn't hear half the record as a promo single before it came out, and then you get the CD and you'd just be like, it'd be like a kid on Christmas listening to the full record in order.
Oh yeah, we consume. It's like people we consume music now, so that's why the singles are like, well, because if you put a record out, it's like 2 weeks, it just gets swallowed up by everything else, So, but I'm just trying not to get. It's like be in that game, but not living and dying by it. It's like I get the value in singles and you but I don't know. I'm just always thinking about the entire thing, So the experience, it's an experience to me.
It really is. Yeah,
listening to a whole record, and
it's also a battle because, like you kind of hinting at, you don't want to just be, if you release an album, like you said, 2 weeks, people have moved on to the next person's new album. You want to be able to drop that single, a little tease, like, and that way, you get people thirsting, for another month or two, and you stay fresh in people's minds because they know they know your record's about to drop. So it's kind of a
you're in exactly, business. It's like an investment. Like you're trying to, it's hard. Like this, making music isn't free. This past year I've gotten into, like I said, more of the home recording just because I don't want the money, not having the money to keep me from being able to like make and put music out. That's my biggest thing always. Cause it's like, and that's like Blake Shelton, I swear, bless his heart. Like that guy, like, I think there's certain people, they get to a point where they're just shameless and they'll just say anything in a song because they have so much money that they can, well, it's just on to the next. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? It's like, well, we put this single out. Well, then we'll just put another one out, next week. I'm referencing like, gosh,
Hell
I don't
right.
know. Huh?
Was this on Hell Right? Or?
Yeah.
I was like, come on, Blake.
Yeah, Blake Shelton is the Country and Cold Cans voted, what was it, the most disappointing?
Most disappointing artist relative to like his talent and the music that he put out early in his career.
Yes.
Like versus what he became. And don't get me wrong, he'll sandwich in 3 or 4 pretty solid to good tracks on his records. But like, man, I get so frustrated with Blake Shelton. I do. Because the man can do a lot more than what he's doing. he's got such a good voice.
Yes.
And it's just like, I'm like, good Lord, man.
Brad Paisley, I feel that same way about him too. Like, just, I'll say anything. Like he'll, and I get, whatever. I'm not, but just as a snobby listener and like fan of like, man, I don't even know what I'm referencing. I think I've blocked it all out.
Yeah.
But
those first like 3 or 4 Brad Paisley records were fantastic.
Yeah.
And then like right around the time, I want to say maybe it was the 5th Gear record, he just kind of just started to nosedive a little bit. And I used to joke that I think that he made it a competition with himself to pick one word and build a song around it. Cause like it was around the time he put out Water, then he put out Ticks. And it's just like every single hook was just one word.
Hey man, probably.
Yeah.
That's all it takes. It's what I'm learning with some of these, like, I call them professional songwriters, like the guys that are like writing for radio. Yeah. I mean, it really does just take one song or one word, and they're just like, that's it. Hook, hook. That's the hook. Chorus is king, and
they'll have 5 other people in the room with them.
but it's. I'll say this too. For me as a songwriter, it's like, okay, it can be that simple. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I said about being up in my emotions or in my feels, like it's like coming like the other side of that. You know what I'm saying? Like it's a different side of the spectrum. So I've found myself in convoluted just places just because I was trying to be too smart or
and
clever.
That's one of the things that I've always like. One of my favorite artists of all time, and he ended up being the Country and Cold Cans voted. We did a whole episode on who we think is the greatest American artist, and one of my favorite artists of all time is Tom Petty. And I think Tom Petty mastered the ability to have a catchy hook, catchy chorus, but with some depth to the songs. Mm-hmm. Like that man had it down.
It's funny you said that. That's my hero right there. Like I know I said Stapleton, but like Petty is like, that's my all-time guy right there. So yeah, his attitude and just the thing with Petty to me is like, have you read his that Warren Zane book, the bio about him? It just gets into his in his whole story, and just how kind of a hard time he had. Like it wasn't like he was this obvious choice as like for the label to just pick up and he convinced his whole band to go from Gainesville to California with nothing, with no promises.
What was it he said? How hard could it be to get a record deal?
Yeah. I mean, they did, but it's just like, so I'm always like, if Tom Petty had to grind, then we all got to grind because, and he's written some of the most iconic songs in everyone's lifetime. It's like, even if you don't even realize it, it's like Tom Petty's probably got the song that's been there, at one point in your life. So,
Wildflowers. Wildflowers is probably one of my favorite records of all time. And I just got that on vinyl maybe a few months ago. And every time I hear that album, there's just so many fantastic songs on it that some of them were big hits, but I really wish people would dive into the album cuts too. Because he's just got such a wealth of like great songs, and his staying power from like, what was it? Their first record came out in 76, I think. And then he was still on top of the rock world until like the mid 90s, even throughout like the kind of like the grunge era, he was still putting out hits. You got to give the guy credit on one thing. And I don't mean to sound like an asshole when I say this, but with the way he looked, he survived the music video era.
He's made that comment before. He's like, the Heartbreakers. He was like, how ironic is that? He's like, look at us. But yeah, 40 years, and I saw them in Cincinnati, I guess the last tour they did, and that was like I'd probably seen him 4 or 5 times, and that was the first time that I'd been like, okay, they're starting to slip a little bit, but I was like, shit, they're 70 years old.
Oh yeah.
You know? It's like they're lucky to be alive, you know, at this point.
Yeah.
Alone,
especially with like with the lifestyle that they live too.
I mean, man. Crazy.
I was fortunate enough, Andy and I both were fortunate enough we saw them. We were in college back in 2014. They came through PNC Arena where NC State plays their basketball games, and tickets weren't cheap, man. And we were in college, didn't have a whole lot of money, but we were just like, look, man, we got to do it. I think they were like 80 some bucks. And we were just like, we got to pull the trigger because we don't know how much longer they're going to be playing. And I'm glad we did because it won't much longer after that, obviously passed away. So it's like, I'm glad that I took the opportunity to go see him when I could.
Oh yeah. Living legend.
Yeah. Because like I saw even though it's, a very different variation of the band, but I saw the Eagles before Glenn Fry died. And I was glad that I got to go with that. And I kind of lucked into that because my dad couldn't make it. So my mom had an extra ticket and she asked me to go. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll definitely go to that. So
how did they do the show? Did they do it chronologically?
Yeah, it was that tour.
Cool.
Yeah, it was a cool thing because they had everybody that could make it back except for I can't remember the guitarist's name that they kicked out in 2001, but he wasn't there. And then another guy that was originally there during the Desperado era couldn't make it because of health reasons. But they had a lot of the older band members that hadn't toured with them in a while back on that tour because it was like the history of the Eagles tour.
Yeah,
that was a really fun show to go to because you could tell they had all kind of like lost a step a little bit with the exception of Joe Walsh.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah, and somehow that guy lived the hardest of all of them, and he's the one that's still rocking.
I know. I had the same exact thought. I was like, and I was also surprised that, and maybe it was just default because he was the only one that had the energy to do it. But
yeah, I
watched that documentary. I guess it was the history of the Eagles, and I was just like, I was really let down by just how Glenn Fry, just the whole thing, with the money and not just saying it, not just being we're not going to come back out unless we make more money. It's I get that, but to say it on the documentary, Joe Walsh is he's all time too. So I'm just like, it's not like he's a scrub, and then for them to come out and let him he did the encore.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't believe that they let him take it like that. But yeah, he stole the show when we saw him.
Yeah, he did. He's an incredible entertainer. But speaking of the Eagles, this popped in my mind earlier when you first brought them up. It's crazy to me that when they first were starting out, and I think they were living in, I think it was California at the time, that Glenn Fry, Don Henley, and Jackson Brown were all just starting out living in the same area. That's just an incredible amount of talent just for musicians that are starting out like that,
I know. What a place to land. And I think one of those docs, they're talking about learning how to write songs, listening through to Jackson Brown through the wall. It's he'd play the piano, sing, then he'd go away, then he'd come back, and they were like, oh, that's how he does that. And it's California. I mean, back to Tom Petty, Gainesville, they shared a backyard with Bernie Ledden, Tom Petty and Bernie Ledden. Tom Ledden, was in Mudcrutch.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just and then you got Skinner, the Allman Brothers.
Yeah.
You've got all those bands in Florida at the time, and it's just crazy how those little pockets of people will just pop up over every so years, and you're just man, that's crazy.
Yeah. And then what was it? I think that even Bob Seger had some a relationship he developed when they were younger with Glenn Fry.
Oh yeah, he was in their band.
Yeah, yeah. Because Bob Seger is another one who I'm a huge fan of. My dad is probably one of his favorite art. My dad's always loved the Bee Gees, the Eagles, Bob Seger, and Donna Summer. It's really just like classic rock and disco.
Yeah,
but,
cool.
But yeah, Bob Seger, man, like he's somebody that I really, him and Bruce Springsteen are two on my list that I really want to see before it's too late.
I saw Seeger in Toledo, 2014 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And everything was down an octave, I think, or at least a half step. And he had like a sweatsuit on he wore the whole time because he was just sweating his butt off, like dry fit stuff and a sweatband. And I was like, this ain't live. Is it live? Not live at the Bullet, but the live.
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
You know,
yeah,
we're not there, but it was still killer.
Yeah. Now, one of those classic rock bands that I've been told that they still perform at a really high level is Fleetwood Mac. I've had some friends of mine that have gone to see them. They said that they're one of the few that they didn't have a ton of extra touring musicians, because that was one of the things I was a little disappointed with the Eagles. But at the same time, like you said, they're in their 70s. I should cut them a little more slack than what I did. But like they had just a ton of touring musicians that just were really playing most of the stuff. Don Henley like wasn't back on the drums the whole time like he used to be, you know.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, look, it was still cool experience to be able to see those guys.
Yeah, singing the songs and Mike Campbell's with
Fleetwood now. Yeah,
Fleetwood now, right?
Yep, he is. That's kind of cool that they absorbed him into that band because what was it? Lindsey Buckingham ain't with them anymore. So like it gives Campbell somebody else to play with that also. But Campbell's a fantastic guitarist. Like he's one of those people when you hear him play, you can tell it's Mike Campbell.
Mm-hmm.
He's very the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Both pretty underrated, I feel like in the the conversations of guitarists.
Yeah. I think that sometimes with Campbell, he gets underrated, at least in my opinion, because maybe he wasn't as experimental as some people were. It was a lot of times it was like straight ahead rock and roll.
Yeah. Yeah. He wasn't getting paid by the note.
Yeah. But hey, one thing we did, anytime we have somebody on, we shift away from music a little bit. So I know that you're from Kentucky. So the question I want to know is it UK or Louisville?
Oh, it's UK.
UK?
Yeah. I don't have the hate for Louisville as most Kentucky fans do, but yeah, it's no question there.
It's kind of a rough year for you guys this year on the hardwood.
Yeah, I didn't really watch much of it. It's like as successful as Cal has been, his approach, like the culture. I grew up with 3 and 4 year guys, and it's you know, as most people do with basketball, it's like you just invest in these guys, and it's just every year somebody new. It's like, well, shit, if they're not any good, then like what do I have? I mean, I know Kentucky, but
yeah,
you know, what does that even mean anymore? So
yeah, I agree with you, man. I'm not a big fan of the one and done culture and era that we're kind of living in. Like I miss the days. Like, so I'm a NC State fan, obviously now, because I went to school there. It's my alma mater. I'm a big fan, but I grew up a Duke fan, and I used to literally watch their games religiously. But over the years, after I went to NC State, I started to drift a little bit because they kind of adopted the Kentucky model with their recruiting now. And I just, like you're saying, I just don't have the connections. I don't even know who's on the roster half the time anymore. There's just so much turnover. It just affects how you, I guess, relate to the team, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I mean, I think overall, it's just like as far as success goes, it's like, well, is it for me at Kentucky, is it just enough to win the SEC? Is that like what you're trying to do? Because it's like, I think what's happened to him in the tournament is he's just had young teams, and it's just like that experience of the tournament. You can't prepare for that. Like the pressure those kids are under, like I get tore up and I'm not even playing. So I couldn't imagine like trying to make a free throw, in front of, however many people in those tournaments. So that's just getting to the tournament. Like Kentucky, they've got expectations out the roof every year in basketball. It's pretty ridiculous, honestly. But
when you've been that good for that long, the fans kind of get accustomed to it. Because I saw a weird stat earlier in the year that the week that Duke, Carolina, and Kentucky were all unranked was the first time that all three of them had been unranked in the same week since like the 1960s. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, they've been consistent, and Kentucky was due a bad year. They've only missed the tournament once since Cal's been there, and you just can't get the guy every year.
Mm-hmm.
It's just he has a lot. He has, but they just they couldn't get it together, and it's they played like a bunch of 17 and 18-year-olds.
Yeah. Yep. It's just like on the same note how we were saying, we should have expected it with the artists being in their 70s. Sometimes we forget that these kids are 18 years old,
Exactly. And they are kids, and it's just a game, and it's not life and death. And
yeah.
That's the thing. But in Kentucky, there is no other sport.
Right.
It's like there's no pro team. So, Kentucky basketball. I mean, up until the last few years, Kentucky football hadn't been worth nothing.
Yeah.
So it was just basketball, and like I grew up. Like the first team I remember was like 96, like their first of like, and they had like 9 or 10 pros on that team.
Yeah.
When every game you watch, they win. It's like, yeah, I guess that's what you become accustomed to. But it's not.
Yeah, and that era too. That era too. Y'all were dangerously close to a three-peat.
Yeah, I mean they lost our best player, and still made the finals. I guess Arizona beat them. Mike Bibby.
Yeah,
they had a squad, but yeah, that's a thing about this time of year too. It's like I have so many memories attached to like tournament games around this time of year, and this year it was, and it's like also the one thing that like everybody will get together for.
Yeah,
it's like can't get together for Christmas, but we'll get together for
for a basketball game.
March Madness.
Yeah, it's funny because like this year was probably the first time in 10, 15 years I didn't fill out a bracket because I just wasn't that into it because one, NC State didn't make it, two, Duke didn't make it for the first time since I was 1 year old, and the only thing I cared about in the tournament really was making sure University of North Carolina didn't win. And when they got ran through by Wisconsin, I was a happy man. I was like, I don't care what happens the rest of it.
Yeah, I don't care for UNC either. Duke was a big nemesis growing up. That 92 game,
the Leitner game.
Yeah, that was like. I remember my mom, I didn't really know what was going on, but my mom like just screaming and like jumping up and down during that game, and then like just going to bed as soon as it was over, just like tore up. So
yeah, I imagine that Leitner probably ain't many people's favorite person in Kentucky.
No, but I still, but like Coach K, I respect, you know, so it was like, it's not like, I mean, and Roy Williams too. I mean, but I don't know, something about that blue.
Yeah, trust me. Like here in the Triangle, Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, like it's all about the blue schools. And those of us that are Wolfpack fans, like it's so annoying because we get treated like the little brother here in the Triangle.
I bet.
And the Carolina fans are the worst. They're the most arrogant group of assholes I've ever met in my life. And we all live so close together that, you encounter them at work, you encounter them in your friend group. Like it's just, they're the worst.
I actually drove through Raleigh last week.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. Was in New Bern.
Okay.
And then we came through Raleigh on our way, basically Charlotte. we stayed in Belmont.
Okay.
Had a wedding there, but
Yeah. My younger brother lives down in New Bern. That's a pretty town.
yeah, it is. I mean, North Carolina's got it all. It's
Yeah.
like
We got a tail end of the Appalachian Mountains, the Piedmont in the middle, and then we got the coast, man. And it's all within it's really all within a reasonable drive.
yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, if you're interested, we like to, when we have an artist on, do one last lightning round before we wrap things out.
Okay.
So I guess I'll start. I got like 2 or 3 questions, and then the other guys will have a couple, and then we can wrap things up from there.
Okay.
So my first thing is, we kind of alluded to some of this, but pros or college athletics?
Pros.
Pros. Okay. Who's your team on that?
I don't know. I just think it's better overall. Like I like. We grew up Browns fans, like in football. That's been a hard.
I'm sure
it's been hard. And then Belichick was with the Browns, so I kind of followed him there. Respect for him, and Brady. Basketball. There's a lot of Kentucky guys. I like the Lakers. I guess I'm just like whoever's good is who I like.
Yeah.
It's like if you like multiple teams, and then you experience more joy through it. So
right.
Yeah, and less heartache. I like the Hornets. I like the squad that they're putting together.
It's kind of it's a shame LaMelo Ball got injured because he was having a hell of a rookie year.
Yeah, he's good. Seems like this game comes really easy to him.
Yeah, it does. All right, so next question. Back in the day, where was your favorite late night drunk fast food stop?
Taco Bell.
Taco Bell? Solid. You can't go wrong with Taco Bell. All right, and I guess for me, kind of pivot back to a music thing. If you could play with one artist, alive or dead, who would it be?
Tom Petty.
Tom Petty. Solid choice. All right. Throw it over to Andy or Kyle, whoever wants to go next.
I'll go.
Beer or whiskey?
Beer.
Strong words from a man from Kentucky.
I know. I just have to stay away from it. I'm trying to stay upright.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah, Andy is definitely trying to stay away from it these days too, compared to when he was a little bit of a younger man.
Jim Beam was the first thing I ever got drunk on, and I loved it, and a little too much. And I right before my daughter was born, I was getting back into just because usually I hadn't had any appreciation for it. It was just like bourbon and Coke or just straight shooting it. But I was getting into some old fashioned and just cocktails and, one or two. And, I can handle it then, but anything past that, I turn into somebody else. So.
All right.
I know exactly like that.
Are you a light beer or a craft beer guy?
I go back and forth.
Okay. Boxers or briefs?
That's
briefs.
a weird question.
Just a random thought I popped in my head when you pulled a show. You were like, "We need some lightning round questions." I was like, "I need to come up with one that I know D-Barry and Andy won't steal." So I was like, "Boxers or briefs?" Yeah. So that's just one I could come up with because I knew Andy was going to steal the beer whiskey one, and then you were going to take my pros or college one. So.
Hey, it is what it is, right?
Yeah, it is what it is.
Well, man, congratulations on having your first child. I know that's awesome, but
thank you. I appreciate it.
We appreciate you coming on, man. We've definitely had a good time chatting with you here.
Yeah, man. Same. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, man. So for this episode of Country and Cold Cans, I'm Logan, sitting here with Andy and Kyle, and this week Nick Jamerson. We'll see you next time.